Live. All right, it's live now. Let me check in the Facebook. Make sure we have on the
Should we begin?
Istiqlal Houston.
Brother Theo, three ending at 4:12. That's good.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's live now, so you can start. Brother Abdullah, would you mind to make it as a horizontal your phone?
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
So it will be a full screen.
Sure. Give me a second.
okay, inshallah, I have to go now. Jazakallah khair, Pak Joko, Pak Pohan.
Okay, Mas Teo, thank you ya. We are done
Yes.
now.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikum. Okay.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So, Brother Abdullah can start.
I think his camera is not on yet.
Camera, put the horizontal.
Yeah.
Asik, you got it, Brother Abdullah.
Bismillah,
Yes.
alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. How's everyone doing?
Yeah, that's good. We can start.
Alhamdulillah. We're past the halfway through Ramadan. It was very quick, but that is how life goes. May Allah reward you and all your families for all the good deeds you've done so far, and allow all of us to maximize the second half to an even higher extent. May Allah bless you and your families with the best Ramadan ever, inshallah. We wanted to have a short series, a number of episodes where we went through the story of the Prophet Muhammad specifically, but also stories of the prophets, because that's part of the context. A quick recap of last time, episode 1. If you go back in history, you go back to a time there was Allah, there was nothing or no one else. Allah existed before the heavens and the earth, before the universe, before the angels, jinn, humans, etc. So that's the beginning of the story. Allah is the uncreated creator of the universe. Then Allah creates the pen, tells it to write everything, creates a throne and sits on it in a way that befits His Majesty. Created heaven and hell, created the heavens and the earth, created angels, jinn, and eventually later on creates humans. And we're like the jinn in the sense that we have free will. Angels do not. So the angels are like, how could you do this? You're going to create another species. They're going to kill and destroy and rape each other and stuff, as they had seen the jinns do. But Allah says, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know what you don't know. There's something special basically about humans. It's not just us saying it out of ego, but Allah created us, He says, He has honored, uplifted, made special the children of Adam. So we are special in that sense. But we have a choice. Because if we choose to follow the shaitan, using our free will and our mind and our ability to choose to reject Allah and disobey Allah just because we don't feel like it, follow our own ego and desires, and to be arrogant and egotistical, etc., to be racist, so like shaitan, like Iblis. If we do that, then we know that where that leads. Those who disobey Allah, they get Allah's punishment at the end of the day, because we have free will in this life, but at the end of the day, there's an infinite hereafter, where there's heaven and hell. If we choose to follow Adam and Hawa, and they did not live a perfect life, they did not live a sinless life, they're not like the angels who they're robots who worship Allah day and night. They were like us, they're human beings. But they're of course among the best human beings. Adam was the first prophet. They were good people. But what they did was they made a mistake. Iblis made a mistake. They both disobeyed Allah. And Iblis chose to be adamant, to be rude, impolite, to be disrespectful to Allah, to continue disobeying Allah and to justify it, to be arrogant, to argue with Allah. It can't be worse than that. And refuse to make tawbah. On the contrary, he wants to encourage everyone else to disobey Allah as well. And Adam and Hawa, as soon as they made a mistake, they recognized their mistake, asked Allah for forgiveness, Allah forgave both of them. But He brought them down to earth. And that's how the story begins. Nuh alayhi salam comes sometime later, generations later, to remind people that they should follow Adam alayhi salam and listen and obey Allah and not follow shaitan, who's encouraging them to worship idols, to poor, for the rich to oppress the poor, to to follow your desires, to drink alcohol, etc., etc. Time goes by, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he has his kids and grandkids, they're prophets, and so on and so forth, right? Yusuf alayhi salam, the great grandson of Ibrahim, unintentionally brings Bani Israel into Egypt. or intentionally at an older age. But first he was thrown into a well, he was taken up, thrown into slavery. It was working for a man who was of power and status and so on, and that was a good man, but a wife that sexually assaulted Yusuf alayhi salam. Thrown into a prison, although he was innocent, forgotten in prison. Eventually comes out, becomes a minister, and brings his family over to Egypt. So Bani Israel is now in Egypt. Then sometime changes, he's no longer the minister, of course, and his people are not so well regarded. They're eventually enslaved by the Egyptians, and for hundreds of years they are encouraged to worship Pharaoh as God. He says, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la," I am God, which is like pretty much unprecedented in human history. In human history, there's plenty of people that claim to be prophets and falsely, but not many people, if any, claim to be God themselves, But Pharaoh is one of those people. So as bad as can be theologically, and in terms of society, so in terms of theology, in terms of society, in terms of justice, as we say today, social justice, it was as bad as can be. They were whipped and beaten and forced to work all day.
See, mommy can hear that.
And
David,
he slaughtered male babies because he's afraid that he's going to lose his power.
David.
We're talking about a baby murder.
Answer me, come here.
Islam was told to speak to him. Everybody else can mute themselves, inshallah. Okay. And Musa was told to go up and speak to the Pharaoh and to tell him that Allah is the one who sent him, the creator of the universe, that he isn't God and that he's not to be worshipped, and let my people go. So theology and sociology, truth and justice. Musa then, with Allah's permission, takes Bani Israel. Yusuf brought Bani Israel into Egypt. Musa takes Bani Israel into Palestine, or right before Palestine. They didn't enter. They eventually enter some generations later. And there's wisdom in that. And then there's a list of prophets that are sent to Bani Israel, and kings that are prophets, like Dawood and Sulaiman. And moving on, because this is the story of the Prophet, not the story of all the prophets, but just giving you some context, it is all relevant. And so history might be the most important subject that most of us don't appreciate or study. History is very important, as well as theology and deen, of course, but they're also tied. And then Dawood and Sulaiman and other prophets come. And eventually Isa is sent to Bani Israel, the last prophet to them. The majority of prophets that we know of actually were sent to this small group of people in the world, Bani Israel. They're the chosen people. Isa was sent to them as kind, generous, modest, honest as can be, as trustworthy, as selfless, as ascetic, as in not attached to the dunya, but here to serve everyone else and not interested in taking for himself, as can be. And they basically, in a sense, you can say, tried to give him the death penalty. But we know that Allah rose him up. He saved him. He was going up against the empire of his time, which is the Roman Empire. He was completely peaceful about it. He was preaching. It was the truth. But they saw him as a threat, as people who are insecure do. They tried to kill him. Right. At their time, they had the cross. That was their death penalty, you can say. But we know that Allah rose him up. And that he'll come back at the end of times. We will follow him, inshallah. But that he will be still following you can say, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ is the leader of humanity, the leader of all the prophets, even though they all came before him. Isa is raised up 600 years later or so in a world of a lot of darkness, a lot of pagan worship, a lot of people that have a false view of Christianity, which is basically, it's basically polytheism, although they don't mean it to be, or they don't see it as such. They see themselves as being monotheistic. But at that point, the Trinity was the majority view in the world. By the time the Prophet ﷺ comes, that's why there's a lot of ayahs in the Quran where Allah talks about Isa and his true nature and Maryam, and talks about how the Trinity is false and that Isa was not, crucified, and that he definitely isn't the one who forgives your sins, only Allah forgives the sins, and so on and so forth. Muhammad is sent in a time where there's a lot of darkness around the world and basically no believers on the planet. There's some pockets of Christians that believe in Jesus, and we can say Muslim in a sense, that are there close to the original teachings of Jesus. We hope Allah will forgive them and that those are rightly guided, but there are very few at that time. And there's a couple of people that basically rejected the idols of Quraysh. Literally a few people, a number of people, maybe like 34 people. They recognized that the idol worship was not correct, and they knew about Ibrahim and the other prophets. They read some scriptures of Jews and Christians. Besides that, pretty much the entire world was in darkness. It's the Roman Empire, there's the Persian Empire, there's Arabs constantly killing each other and attacking each other and insulting each other. They're tribalistic and just, basically it's the law of the jungle. No organized society, no serious system, no unified government. No real laws, some unofficial laws that they agreed to, some cultural stuff, but not really laws. The rich oppressed the poor, men oppressed women. They were even proud of it. They didn't see anything wrong with the fact that men are physically stronger. So they're capable of it. So they would abuse them. They would use them and abuse them. They'd discard them. And if you're Arab, they saw themselves better than any non-Arabs. So they would oppress others, East African, for example. And others, there are, black Africans from East Africa, they're seen as lesser than the Arabs. I don't really know what the basis was, but there really is no basis. If someone has that mindset, someone has a heart that's closed off, a mind that doesn't function, doesn't see clearly, then you don't really need any logic behind the system that you built. But they built one that basically was in their self-interest, which is the norm. When you look at human history, pretty much anyone that had any power, they just did whatever they felt like doing. They did whatever's in their best self-interest. They might justify it with a religion or a view or a belief system or rules or laws. They might do that second as a secondary thing to justify and also to spread their views or to get others basically to work for their self-interest. It's a type of oppression, and that's why from an Islamic point of view, the worst type of oppression actually is a false belief, like a false idol, a false god, a false religion. That's the worst. And people talk about like economic injustice and social injustice and how about colonization and slavery and yeah, but that will come secondary. The false view on Jesus, alayhi salam, may Allah send peace and blessings on him and his mother. The false view on him, the Trinity and so on, was used to colonize and enslave people all over the world for now 500 years. There's been 500 years of slavery, of colonization and post-colonialism. There's been 400 years of slavery and post-slavery. It all ties together. You cannot separate history and sociology from theology and from deen. It should not be the case. So we hope that those who study these topics and those of us in the Muslim community, as privileged as we are here in Houston and other cities, we hope that the young Muslims will study these things seriously, understand their role, inshallah, overcome all the identity crisis that Muslims and non-Muslims are having all over the world today. Be able to see through all the nonsense that's online, because we're bombarded by more information, more different lifestyles, more different false views than ever before. Right? The information age, the information by itself is actually useless. In fact, it can be damaging. It's not a net positive just that you have more information, not necessarily, right? Because there's information, there's knowledge, there's wisdom. Information by itself, random facts. It's not knowledge, which means it's beneficial information that can benefit you, that you can apply. Then it's not necessarily beneficial. Right? It's not necessarily good for you to have just random information. If you have knowledge, that's different. That's beneficial information. And ideally, you want to work towards wisdom, which takes years because you practice, you make mistakes, you accept your mistakes. See, good human beings versus bad human beings from a Islamic point of view are not those who make mistakes and those who don't. Those who are successful at all times and those who are failures, like that. It's a false, that's not how it works. Success versus failure Islamically is you make mistakes, like Adam alayhi salam, like the prophets, like the Sahaba. You make mistakes, but you recognize your mistakes. You commit sins because the Prophet said, "Kullu bani Adam khata." Every child of Bani Adam makes mistakes. So don't be like, "Oh, I'm not going to make mistakes," or or how dare that person? The Prophet said, "Every child of Bani Adam makes mistakes," and that includes sins. The good person, successful believer is someone who, when they make mistakes, they recognize it, they admit it, because it's hard to. You would like to think that everything you do and everything you say and everything you believe is true. Ego. To admit, that's like shaitan. He was adamant, he was persistent about what he said and did. You want to be among those who will admit your mistake, recognize your faults, accept your sins, ask Allah for tawbah. You make tawbah, you ask Allah for forgiveness, and then try your best to improve and change and so on. So that's a successful person. Going back, so in Arabia, they believed in might equals right. If we're strong enough, if we're powerful enough, if we can get away with it, then it all goes. Rich oppress poor, men oppress women, etc., etc. And the Prophet Muhammad from a young age, he was known to lead. He would sit with groups of those who were much older than him in terms of making decisions for society. When people needed help, he was always at the service of others. He was known as being honest and trustworthy when really people were just, it was these clans and tribalistic society. They didn't care so much about truth and about right and wrong as much as they cared about just they're always fighting just for their tribe. If somebody from your tribe fights somebody else, you would defend them just because they're from your tribe. It's not really true honor, true dignity. It's not about truth and morality. That was kind of their system. Prophet was someone who spoke speak the truth even if it's against himself. So people respected that and they loved that and it stood out. It was honest and trustworthy. People could leave him with their stuff. And they know that he would never take it or steal it or lie about what he has. To the extent that even when later on he starts preaching that he's a prophet, people rejected that view and tried to attack him and insult him, tried to kill him, in fact. And they hated that because it was a threat to their economic, social, political order. Even then, they would still leave their stuff with him because they knew he would not take their stuff. He would not lie about their stuff. He would not misuse or abuse the amana, the trust that they left with him. But he was the honest and the trustworthy. From a young age, he was always taking care of the poor, the homeless, and needy. Although he was an orphan, he did not have much money. Okay, we'll fast forward, inshallah, to a certain age in which he had already lost his mother and father. He was an orphan from a young age. He's growing up and he's living under the protection of his grandfather for a few years, but eventually his uncle, who's his dad's brother, for the bulk of his life. But from a young age of, let's say, around 10 to to 52, something like that, 50, in his 50s, let's say. So the bulk of his life, though, 40 years, he's under the guidance and protection and so on of his uncle, who's the head of his tribe. It's a tribalistic society. You have to have, quote unquote, a passport or a visa from your tribe. So that's his, his citizenship. His uncle never accepted Islam, but he protected him as much as he could. In his 20s, the Prophet ﷺ, already known, respected, and loved by the people in his society. People are already telling their kids bedtime stories about the Prophet ﷺ. But he is poor, and he's, minding sheep mostly, and he isn't that rich, and he's an orphan. And he is hired by, you can say, one of the CEOs, somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, or the head of Tesla, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates, someone like that of his society, of Arabia. So not the world, like today, these are some of the top CEOs in the world, but in Arabia, some of the biggest names in terms of business, among them was Khadija. We can say, may Allah be pleased with her now, because she comes out to be from the top companions, female companions. Radiallahu anha, Khadija, at that time, of course, they were not Muslim. She's one of the most successful businesswomen, and she's known for her character and her beauty. She was twice widowed, husbands that passed away, and of course, of no fault of her own. And although generally, if you look at throughout human history, in general rule, Arabs were not so weren't very concerned about this maybe at that time as much. Today in the Middle East and in the world today, the Muslim world today, it is a big deal. At that time, not as much, but generally throughout human history, the general norm is that a woman that was divorced or widowed or has kids, etc., is seen as less valuable in terms of marriage. But Khadija was getting proposals from all the people in Mecca. Even the elite of Mecca, they were proposing to her. She was seen as a prize, inshallah. And she is rich, so that helps as well, in a sense. And she hears of the reputation of the Prophet ﷺ. See, if a woman has money, and she was rich, among the richest, even compared to the men, that is the case when you're maybe less impressed by a man who has money. And she's also probably dealt with others who are at the top, and she knows that some of them have horrible character, even if they're rich. They're oppressive and abusive to others in their family, even if they're rich. So she didn't fall for the trap, right? So although there were people that are older and were richer, more prestigious than the Prophet ﷺ, she recognized, she had enough life experiences to know that his character above everything else. So she hires the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, he's looking for a job. He's young. He would like to make some money. He's working for now, he just got hired at Amazon when he had been working at CVS, Walmart, something normal. From that, working as an employee of Amazon versus being a cash register at Walmart. It's a huge difference, right? So he says yes. She's testing him in a sense. She sends someone else with him, and he's doing trade. At that time, Arabia, Mecca, is basically on what makes it the capital of Arabia. And they did trade. They did business, right? In certain areas, they have dates. Other places, they have cloth. Some place has spices or whatever, So they would trade. They'd go with a number of camels in a row. They'd pile them up. That's kind of like a plane taking a shipment, or like a boat today that has can have cars and planes and all sorts of what are those called? Those huge rectangles that have like storage containers. One of those big ships. At that time, the ship of the desert was a caravan, which is a line of camels. So they went up north, they went up south. Khadija has her own caravan because she's CEO of her own company. Basically, she's rich. Inshallah. Prophet works for her. He's very honest and very direct and so on, but very good with people, very good character manners. Where he goes, everyone loves him, everyone wants to do business with him, everyone wants to deal with him. He comes back with a good chunk of money, and he took none of it for himself, so he didn't scam her in any way. So he was honest, but also competent in business. Khadija sees that. She loves working with him, loves having her as an employee. At some point, she basically tells her sister to hint at the fact that she's interested in him in marriage. She wants someone of character and competence and all that. And she knows that his reputation is excellent. So she basically, in a sense, you could say, indirectly proposes to him, and which is not the norm of any time in human history, as far as I know. Definitely not today or at that time. It wasn't the norm. Generally, men propose, but she proposed to him. And the reason I'm focusing on this is the fact that we live today with the fact that people see money over character. Just speaking to one of the imams in the Houston community that I respected, one of my mentors, basically, was it just yesterday or the day before? And he was telling me, Abdullah, I was talking to him about business, entrepreneurship, finance. I'm being honest. Yeah, this is a personal story, but inshallah, it's a benefit to the youth that I'm trying to speak to. I was talking to him about business, entrepreneurship, different brand deals, different opportunities to make some money, and nothing wrong with that, of course. And the intention is, inshallah, Allah bless us with money. We want to take care of our families first, also be able to contribute to society and to the community. We want to give da'wah and to be able to teach courses and to do a lot for the community. But if you want to be sustainable, you need to find a way to make an income. So that was kind of the concept. We're talking to the Imam about this, and he reminded me what I kind of already knew, but I maybe had been forgetting or what I overlooked. He said, Abdullah, and remember, and just by the way, this is a tangent, right? He's actually one of the Imams that encourages me in terms of entrepreneurship and points out business opportunities, and he encouraged me to take entrepreneurship more seriously. He said it's part of the Sunnah and it's part of Islamic history. And with all due love and respect to my Indonesian community, they should know this more than almost anybody else. How did Islam come to Indonesia? It wasn't through engineers and doctors. Nothing wrong with being an engineer and doctor. Primarily it came through entrepreneurs, through businessmen, right? And it wasn't necessarily da'is, people who had studied the deen their whole life. Of course, nothing wrong with that. Some of the top scholars in history dedicated their life to knowledge, and it makes sense. And they became very capable and very competent in that area, and therefore they were able to write books that people benefited from centuries to come. No doubt, it's incredible. But also recognizing that if you're going to speak to different countries and different cultures, you're going to dedicate hours of your time to be able to spread the message and so on, there has to be a financial side to that. It can't be just someone who's read the books. To be able to deal with people, usually businessmen are better at that. And to bring Islam to another country, such as Indonesia, and I'm sure other countries, Africa and so places, today in Latin America and others, through entrepreneurship. Right? Anyway, so we're having this discussion about entrepreneurship and how it ties to da'wah and so on. He reminded me, going back to the Prophet, like, Abdullah, don't forget, it's character above everything else. I'm like, Bashir, if you have Imam, I need to make some more money because then, I'm able to then, it's easier for them to get married and have a family. Abdullah, it's your character above everything else. Don't forget, it's character above money. I'm like, but Imam, we have to recognize, we have spoken about this. We live in a society in America. Arabian society was very similar. The umbrella wasn't any one religion. Today in America, is there a religion? Does America have a religion? Not really. Christianity, you can say, because there are more people practicing Christianity than any other religion in America. Fine. Is that really the religion of America? Or maybe 20% of Americans practice Christianity, actively, they're devout in their Christianity, believe it. By the way, you can fact check it. 20% was, I'm saying, for example, I don't know that. So America doesn't have a religion in that sense. This was paganism, but they worship different gods, different idols. What is that really of a religion? What is the belief system behind it? These idols won't help you, benefit you. They've created the idols themselves. They built the idols and they sold them to other people and made money. That's not a religion. There's no salvation. There's no tawbah. So religion should be built upon. There's no really benefit for you in this life or in the hereafter to worship idols. So today, at that time, the religion was money. It was money above everything else. The umbrella, American society, it's all the different industries, it's capitalism, it's money. Then there's different religions, and they kind of have to fall underneath that. The law and order, science and technology, all the different pillars of Western society, American society, they really go under. It's money first. So he reminded me, he said character above everything else. I said, but Imam, we're dealing with this society, we got to recognize that we're in a place where it's about money before everything else. And Imam, I'm being honest now, sharing with you, inshallah, this benefit. Imam, I'm trying to get married, but it's hard, you have to make some money. Allah's character above everything else. Anyway, Prophet exemplified that. This is the man that Allah chose out of all human beings, the billions of men that have ever lived and maybe will live. Allah chose Muhammad to be the example to men and women, of course, but is the best man and the best human being ever created. You know that he was poor and broke and an orphan. He went through trial after trial. He was not like this king who lived a good life. And or to make it more relevant to America, because we don't have kings, although we do kind of. We have the heads of the different industries, the heads of hip hop, for example, the fashion moguls, the celebrities, the actors, the athletes, the politicians are kind of kings in a sense, or princes and princesses, kings and queens. So in terms of money and fame and so on. But know that the Prophet ﷺ lived in a society where they had that. They had their playboys, they had the warriors that were well known, leaders of the different tribes, they had their celebrities, they had their poets. He was not any of that. But he was the number one in terms of character, in terms of his mannerisms. And he cared about everybody else. He didn't just care about himself. He wasn't self-indulged. He wasn't obsessed with his image. He just did the work, right? Just took care of the poor and the homeless and needy. He was at the service of others, always trying to learn, figure out how he can benefit them. And at a certain age, he recognized, after marrying Khadija, kind of fast forwarding, he marries Khadija, and that elevates him in society because now he actually has money. He was able to help more people. But see, it was his character and values in the first place. He was taking care of the poor and the homeless and needy. You don't need much money. But now they had Khadija behind him, and she backed him up and believed in him and his vision and his mission and his goals and his values. He was able to help more people. So it became, it became like, you could say, a quote unquote power couple in that society, but of course with a lot of respect and maybe more traditional gender roles. It was a power couple in a sense. But it comes a certain time where he recognized that this society is so corrupt and so messed up, and that it was really hurting him in his soul, that he can't really help everybody, and he wishes that things were better, and he cared and loved his people deeply. Of course, they didn't really want to change. So at a certain time in his life, in his 30s, around 40 years old, he found himself going up to a cave, up in a mountain, Jabal al-Nur. It's a mountain called Nur, and the cave called Hira, where he would meditate. He didn't have prayer. or fasting or dhikr or dua or Quran or salah in the sense that we know of today. It's a big blessing from Allah. We take these things as small when they're huge. Allah created humanity and chose our nature, and for our nature, He gave us a system that's best suited for our nature. He gave us ibadat that are best for us in terms of our spirituality, because we have a natural need, we have a soul, natural need to worship and connect with Allah. He gave us all this, but a lot of people in history didn't have this. Also said at this point, didn't have this. He didn't have the correct belief system, although he was upon the fitrah, he was upon his nature. So he recognized that idol worship was wrong, and alcohol and drugs and zina was wrong, but he didn't have necessarily the correct view of the world. Like, he didn't know all the truth. He didn't have knowledge yet. And he didn't also know about proper ibadah. He didn't know about dhikr and dua, Quran and salah. He didn't have all that to really settle his soul. But since he was upon his nature, his fitrah is our innate nature. We're born upon a nature which is pure and honest, and a basic sense of morality and truth and justice, and searching for something to attach ourselves to. We want to worship something. It's part of our nature. Of course, it's from Allah, because He wants us to worship Him and none besides Him. But he finds himself meditating, just reflecting, thinking about the world and about society, trying to reach out to something bigger. And he's up in the cave and so on, because society has a lot of There's a 40-minute limit to a Zoom link, so you kick this out. If you can please send the link again to the group chat or wherever you guys send it to, WhatsApp group, and we can wait a minute. Send the link again, because some people I think it ended. And unless you guys want to end, just let me know. But I have a few more minutes for that, so the 5-10 minutes. But it's up to you all. I'm available inshallah. Istiqlal Houston. Assalamu alaikum. Are you there?
Waalaikumsalam.
Yes. Can you send the link again to the WhatsApp group or Facebook?
I'm sending a message to them.
Okay, let me know when you continue recording, when you want me to start.
Sure.
And shall I make you co-host?
You do not need to. I just grab the screen from here. That's fine. Bang Puan, sudah dikasih message ke yang lain?
Belum, Mas.
Kasih tahu aja, suruh join lagi.
Gimana caranya ngirim message ke mereka ya?
Loh, grupnya mereka apa?
Hah?
Grupnya mereka apa?
Oh, ke grupnya. Oke. Bisa ini nggak, salah satu si Arya ini bilang supaya mereka punya grup sendiri, Mas. Bisa suruh Arya unmute nggak? Suruh dia kirim ke grupnya mereka.
Okay. Hey Arya or Humaira, can you just present the message to the group again
Okay.
to join?
Houston, are we starting?
Sing ya.
Or continuing? What time do you guys want to end? Because I mean, it's the story of the Prophet. We have plenty of. How much more do we want to go? Brothers, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. Well, I'm good on time, but I just want to know how much more do you guys want to do today?
I think 10 minutes would be good.
Okay, I'm gonna start. Is it good? Are you guys recording or?
Yeah,
No,
yes.
it's not recording.
We are streaming right now still. We are good.
Bismillah.
How long? How long, brother? Oh, 10 minutes?
10 minutes, inshallah, okay?
10 minutes, inshallah. Go ahead, brother.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam. Okay, so we left off at the part one, we could say, was that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam found himself starting to meditate, to reflect, and to ponder, trying to connect with something bigger, so to understand society and why things were polluted and corrupted, and why people were acting in the ways they were acting, and oppressing each other and hurting each other, lying, cheating, stealing, etc. So he finds himself going up to Cave Harat in Jabal al-Nur. He'll go up, sometimes Khadija will give him some food. He might give it off to someone who's poor, homeless, and needy. He'll go up and meditate, come back down, some hours later, a day later. Sometimes maybe stay there for a night or so, or longer. Sometimes he would fast, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, although he didn't necessarily have our fast. This is obviously before he's a prophet, so there's no Ramadan, but he didn't really eat for some time. Maybe his fitrah, maybe naturally he just understood the fact that like our desires and our even though food and water, of course, it's a natural desire, it's not a bad desire, but recognizing that people are running after all like food, they just they lust after food and other needs and other desires, and maybe staying away from it can get you to see more clearly and think more clearly. Maybe he saw that, so he was not eating much, and so on and so forth. Eventually, at some point, at 40 years old, one time after being up in the cave for some time, I believe it was like 2 or 3 days, he was there. Jibreel alayhi salam was sent from Allah. He's the messenger on behalf of Allah to all the messengers. So he's the messenger to the messengers. He's the head of all the angels. Jibreel alayhi salam spoke to all the prophets in history. He was sent at 40 years old to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we all know the story, of course. He tells him, "Iqra, read." And he came in angelic form, not in human form. So it was very scary, very huge, very strong. He filled up the horizons. You can't see anything else. The angels are ginormous, and Jibreel alayhi salam had 600 wings. So imagine a creature can't even imagine how he looks. But Muhammad saw him, he had never seen anything like this. Naturally, he started thinking like, am I seeing things? Am I deluded? Am I mad? Am I crazy? Am I possessed by a jinn? He's scared for himself and worried about his own soul and his own salvation. But Jibreel comes to him and says, "Iqra, read." And the Prophet understood it like literally, like read. And the Prophet was like, "Well, I can't read." And most people in Arabian society, most people in such societies, could not read or write. It's mostly an illiterate society, minus of some people at the top, they can read and write. Just by the way, Umar al-Khattab was among those who could read and write, and which is beautiful. And of course, he ends up leading the Muslim world for like 10 years or so. But Prophet was not among those who could read and write. So he said, "Ma ana biqari," I can't read. Jibreel ordered him, "Iqra, read." He's like, "Ma ana biqari." I'm like, I can't read. Like, that's not me. I'm not among those who can read. Like, you asked me to do something that I can't do. I can't read. He's like, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqa al-insana min 'alaq, iqra wa rabbuka al-akram." Read in the name of your Lord, so on and so forth. Surah Halaqah goes on. Read. And of course, read doesn't just mean read like open up a book and read. It means to recite, to learn, to proclaim, to educate yourself and others. It's a lot wider than just reading. It's the value and the principle in our faith of knowledge. So one of the top values in our faith for sure. We're definitely a scholarly tradition. If you look at Islamic history, the encyclopedias and the books that were written, the universities that were built, the scholars that we produced, the minds that Islam produced, it's unparalleled to any other civilization, group, faith, community, empire, whatever word you want to use. Something we pride ourselves on, knowledge. And this is what I want to end with today, inshallah, over the next couple minutes. The first thing revealed is read. So that emphasizes the importance of knowledge. Imam Bukhari, one of the top scholars in Islamic history, undoubtedly, possibly the most read books after the Quran in the Muslim world, are among them are Sahih Bukhari, the compilation of a short number of 2,000-3,000 hadiths that are very authentic and high level of authenticity, which are the sayings of the Prophet are narrated and compiled by Imam Bukhari. Other books that are possibly even more well read, Sahih Bukhari is up there. Pretty much every Muslim library, Islamic library, has Bukhari at home, masajid all over the world. Others are like Imam Nawawi, who came hundreds of years later, so about 700 years ago, halfway between us and the Prophet. We had Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Nawawi, these guys in Syria, so some of the top scholars on history. Imam Nawawi has the book Riyadh al-Salihin, which I know your community is familiar with, but pretty much every Muslim community all across the world, the Indonesians, Malaysians, Nigerians, Palestinians, Egyptians, Pakistanis, white, brown, black, everybody knows the 40 Nawawi, 40 hadiths of Imam Nawawi, Riyadh al-Salihin, etc. These books are by Imam Nawawi. So, and then after that, maybe it's Sahih Bukhari. It's among the top, read books ever. Going back, so we have a scholarly tradition, we respect and value knowledge. In Sahih Bukhari, in the book of Bukhari, where it's not just a random compilation of hadiths that are authentic, but they're also by chapter, so that we can actually learn lessons and we can basically systematically study the deen. In that, there is a chapter titled Bab al-ilmi qabla al-qawli wal-amal. The bab, or the chapter of, bab literally means door, but in this case it means chapter, like for books, it's like bab. The chapter of knowledge before words, or saying, and action. Basically, that knowledge is a prerequisite for doing. You gotta know before you do. You gotta learn before you can teach. You want to do good in the world, you gotta know good first. You have to know everything before you do anything? No. But before you do something, if you pray, learn how to pray correctly. You want to do business? Make sure you learn what our deen has to say about business. And our religion has a lot to say about business. You want to get married? You want to raise kids? Guess what? The Prophet taught us the best way to be a husband and father. Best way to be a leader of a community. Trying to be an imam of a community. Leading prayer, doesn't take much. If you know how to pray, you almost pretty much can lead prayer. But an imam, the true sense of the word imam, someone who leads communities, builds up communities, could show people all the issues in our society, show them clearly how to navigate society. That's an imam. In our history, when we use the word imam, it wasn't thrown around as like a small thing. Nothing, no offense to anyone who's leading prayers, or that's their role is to give khutbahs and to lead prayers and so on. That's nothing wrong with being imam in that sense. But the word imam, when we study Islamic history, we say Imam Bukhari, Imam this, Imam. We're talking about somebody who was a source of guidance for their community, their society. If not even, if they do it well enough, they also become an example to people even generations after. Although every generation has its unique challenges, but if you're able to really provide value in terms of understanding the problems and the issues and the challenges and the threats that face the person's iman primarily in society, be able to help people. That's why there are scholars hundreds of years ago over 1,000 years ago, like Imam Bukhari, it's around 1,200 years ago. Their books are still relevant today. Their projects still relevant today. The students that they produced. Because also it's not just about writing books. You teach people, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm always trying to learn and try to teach, and I'm at the very bottom, level 1, if not even level 0, in terms of Islamic knowledge. But with the little I learn, I'm trying to learn a little bit every day. I would do my best to teach. Because if you can invest in not just land and property, which our community loves to do, with all due respect. We have over 100 masajid in Houston. Nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. Inshallah, we should build another 100 more over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Nothing wrong with that. Although we want to be balanced, know that investing in land and property and university degrees and et cetera, gold, silver, oil, Silicon Valley, Apple, Google, like, none of these things I think on the list, to the best of my knowledge today, are bad investments. In fact, they're some of the best investments. But the best investment is investing in knowledge and people of knowledge. Basically, studying deen, even if you become broke in the process because you're missing out on job opportunities, fine. Studying deen, and then teaching it to others, again, which is also sacrifice, because the chance that you're going to get paid highly to teach deen is very unlikely. In Islamic history, there were certain moments, there were certain times where people that were scholarly, studied deen, actually made a lot of money, but generally, the money is in other things that you're sacrificing when you study and teach knowledge, Islamic knowledge. Not the only knowledge that's beneficial. Don't misunderstand me. Nothing wrong with studying law and medicine, engineering and science, etc. Not only nothing wrong. That's ibadah. Whatever you study and work and teach and so on, it's ibadah. It's a worship of Allah if you have the right intention. It's beneficial knowledge, and obviously in an industry that's clean. But studying and teaching aqidah, fiqh, sirah, hadith, no doubt is the highest form of knowledge and the best ibadah. But going back, so obviously there's a lot more to be said, but it's part of our Islamic tradition, something we're proud of, the fact that we value knowledge. Especially Islamic knowledge, but knowledge in general. We value knowledge. But then, to finish off, because I know some of you have to go, the next two, among the earliest two revelations, the first one was about read, acquire knowledge and teach and so on. The next two were also orders to the Prophet Muhammad, but by extension to all of us, was Ya ayyuhal muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila. Actually, first, that's the third one. Second one, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'anzir. Then Ya ayyuhal muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila. As you know, Surah al-Muddathir and Surah al-Muzammil, they are from the chapter before the last, the 29th chapter in the Quran, right? Juz al-Tabarak. These are among the earliest revelations, because Allah tells him when he goes back home, he runs down from the cave after he saw an angel thinking maybe it could have been a jinn, a demon, he's possessed, he doesn't know what happened. He runs back home, he runs back to Khadija, who not only invested in him when he had basically no money, just had good character and manners, and had a good reputation. She invested in him and married him and took care of him and gave him his wealth and respected him as a man, although she's older and she was twice widowed, etc. She also at this moment is a good test of her character as well. He comes back and says, give me a blanket, like he's like shivering, he's cold, he's like kind of like, I don't want to use any, this is the process. I don't want to say he's crazy or insane or delusional, but he's afraid that he might have been delusional. So he's kind of panicking in a sense, gets some anxiety, kind of maybe like a panic attack. I don't know. Hopefully we don't say anything about the Prophet that isn't true. So I don't know. Maybe I can go back and ask a scholar to have what's the best way to explain his situation. But you can say he was panicking in a sense, right? He was definitely not calm and relaxed as he normally was. He goes back to Khadija and he says, Zammiluni, death, like cover me up and like give me like a blanket, like when you're kind of like in shock. And so you feel cold, although it's not necessarily a cold night. He's like, I'm not feeling too good, yeah. And Khadija could have been like, be a man, right? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, right, like get your own blanket. Well, you're up in a cave and all of a sudden you're coming home and now you're gonna give me this attitude. Like, she's like, of course she ran and comforted him and so on. He's like, I think I'm crazy. I think I'm insane. I think I was seeing things. I think it was a jinn. I'm possessed. I don't know what's going on. Khadija, I don't know what's going on. You know what she said? She could have been like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like, just chill out, bro. It's gonna be okay. She didn't do that. What did she say? She said, Allah will never forsake you. Like, you possessed, something bad happening to you? No way. Not you. You take care of the poor and the homeless and needy. You're a good man. You're always honest and trustworthy. Everything's gonna be okay. Allah will never let you go. Allah will never leave you. Nothing bad's gonna ever happen to you. A jinn will never possess you. You're a good man. You're gonna be okay. Amazing, yeah. But yeah, after he's shivering for some time, Allah reveals these two. The one who's covered up, the one who's shivering, arise and warn. Your job. Don't forget, Angel Jibreel was sent to you. Yes, you might be afraid and sick and nervous and upset for some time, but know that you have a job now. You have a mission, and for the rest of your life, you don't have really a choice. Arise and warn. Go and warn the people. Warn them what? About severe punishment with the hellfire. But also warn them that worship idols is not the right way to live your life. That you're rejecting Allah and disobeying Allah, etc., etc. The message of the prophets is warn them. There's a day of judgment. For every action, word, deed, you're going to be accountable for it. There is good and bad. There's right and wrong, and there's a hereafter. The people of Quraysh, they did not believe in prophets or books. unlike the Jews and the Christians, and they did not believe in hereafter. They did not believe in life after death. They did not believe in heaven and hell. So they had a lot of work to do. Yeah, so the Prophet had a lot of work to do. He said, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'andir, arise and warn. And then he said also, and then he comes back after a whole day of telling people, guys, I'm a messenger, I'm sent by Allah. You got to believe I'm your people. I've been always trying to take care of you. I care about you. I'm trying to help you. I'm not asking anything from you. But there's a God, there's good and bad deeds. You can't just keep oppressing people. This is wrong. You can't treat people like this, etc., etc. You can't worship idols. You made them your own self. This is false. After doing this for a whole day, coming back exhausted and frustrated and upset, and people not listening, people are insulting you and throwing things at you and pulling you by the neck and throwing things at you and throwing trash in your place, even your own uncles and your own cousins, they're rejecting you. After all, he comes home and he's just, Allah says, stand up. Even I know you're exhausted the entire whole day, but come, stand up for at least a portion of the night. Pray the night prayers. And yes, a few ayahs have been revealed at this point, but meditate on these few ayahs. Recite them again and again throughout the night. The ayahs have been revealed, and stand up in prayer. And of course, this is tahajjud qiyam, which is the sharaf, the honor of the believer. There's very few believers that stand up when everyone else is sleeping. And I'm not saying I'm the one who's excellent in my qiyam. I would like to get better. And Ramadan, I encourage you to, it's easier to pray at least a little bit of the night prayer. Tarawih is part of that. And if you can pray even a little bit more past Tarawih before Fajr, after you go home by yourself, it's even better. But Tarawih is good. It's part of Qiyam. It's easier to do it in Ramadan than in other times. But if you can try to maybe do 8 rakahs in Ramadan, throughout Ramadan, and do 2 maybe outside of Ramadan throughout the year, or even if it's every other day, even if it's once a week, even if it's once a month, better than doing 0. If you can, try. And I'm not trying to, put you down. If you're not able to, if you're struggling with your 5 prayers, then that's not the priority because it's something that's extra. But if you are praying your 5 prayers, something you can consider among the ways to improve. One is your da'wah and your working and volunteering in society and helping out in your masjid. Another one is your personal rituals and our religions about all of this, knowledge, spirituality, and activism. That was the point I wanted to come to. We'll end with that, inshallah. We'll continue and add on to this. These are themes in our faith. It's not, you can't speak 5-10 minutes or even an hour about knowledge, spirituality, activism. These are the 3 areas of personal development because we have a mind, body, soul. And these are the areas that Allah wants us to constantly improve in until we die. We hope that we die at our best state. Least amount of sins, most amount of tawbah. Hopefully Allah's forgiven us for all of our sins because it's possible. There will be people that will come on the day of judgment, they have no sins. But the Prophet said, every child of Bani Adam makes mistakes and sins. So how do you reconcile the two? It's because you can commit sins all day, all night for the rest of your life. But you can ask Allah sincerely for tawbah, for repentance. It's just a moment of truly asking Allah for forgiveness and regretting that what you had done and wishing that you'll never do it again and asking Allah for help to never do it again. When you do that, Allah forgives your sins. Those are between you and Him. The sins between you and people, you got to ask them for forgiveness. And good luck with that. But you need to try your best to beg them to forgive you. But your sins between you and Allah, you just ask Allah forgiveness. He forgives and forgives easily. It's easy for Him. And by the way, wrapping up with this, Ramadan is the month of Siyam, fasting, of course. It's Ramadan, it's the month of fasting. It's also the month of the Quran, and you guys know this. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. It's the month of the Quran. It's also the month of dua, and it's the month of tawbah, the month of asking Allah for forgiveness. So I encourage you to ask Allah for forgiveness and think and reflect about the story of the Prophet. We're trying our best to be like the Prophets, although we can't be. In terms of our character, our manners, the way we care about other people, even when they're attacking you, insulting you, criticizing you. And know that you're doing your best in society to go and help other people and to be good. And whatever your job is, whatever industry, whatever career you're taking, it's okay if you're not like doing da'wah full time or a scholar or imam or like the Prophets, or it's okay if you're an engineer, doctor, lawyer, whatever it is, you give it your 110% every day. Do your best in your studies and your work and in your taking care of your family and being a good son, daughter, husband, wife. Give it your 110%. That's the way to be like the Prophets as much as possible. And be good to people even when they're bad to you. Be in a society where people are doing a lot of evil and there's a lot of corruption. You still be an example of good. Treat people based on your values and principles, not based on theirs. People abuse you, you don't be bad to them. When people are good to you, be good to them. No, you're trying to be a good person, then you're good to people that are good to you, and you do your best to be good to people who are not good to you, or at least stay away from them. Don't start lying because you're surrounded by people that are lying. Don't cheat people just because everyone in society is cheating. Don't scam people because there's a lot of scams around us. Right? Don't abuse women just because you're a man and you're able to in society. Everyone's like, yeah, whatever. Just date, hook up, do whatever everyone else is doing. No. Stand upon your own morals and values and principles. That's how you be like the Prophets. And that's the point of us studying the seerah. It's not just like, oh, cool story. Like, oh, well, the story that has no dragons or magic or anything. It's a real life story. That's what makes it amazing. The stories of the Prophets are the best stories ever told. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن. Allah says, I'm going to tell you the greatest stories ever told. And then he tells the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. By extension, the stories of the Prophets. They're the greatest stories ever told. Why? Because they're real, first of all. It's not magic and dragons and stuff. Although they're even more exciting than those stories. They're real life people, and they were not perfect. As in, they were not angels, and they were not God. They're not divine. They're human beings that Allah guided. He chose them because they had the best hearts. But guess what? We can try our best to be like them. And if we fail to be like them, which we will, and we're less than them, and we're not able to do all the good that they did, and stay away from all the evil that they were able to, that's okay. If you're trying your best in this short life that we have to be as best as possible, to be like the Prophets, you fall short, you're 20% of the Prophets, 10%, 1%, 80%, 90%, regardless. You're going to be better than almost everyone around you. You're going to be better than the version of yourself you would have been if you didn't look at the prophets as examples. You took anyone else in your society as an example, and you try to be like them, and you're not going to be as cool or awesome as the celebrity you're trying to follow. Guess what? You're not going to do much with your life. You try to be like the prophets, even if you get 1%, that's the best life you could have lived, and that's what Allah wants from us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه يا فوز المستغفرين. I'm totally down to stay for a few minutes together, like a Q&A, comments, questions, concerns. But if some of you have to go because we definitely went over, I accept that and I appreciate that. And may Allah bless you all. Hope to see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. I believe the next weekend. You're free to contact me outside of the Zoom. Yeah. On Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, it's Abdullah.speaks. On Facebook, it's Abdullah Najjar. If you ask Theo and any of the others involved in your masjid, inshallah, they can connect you as well. My text, you can text me anytime. If you're under 18, especially if you're female, you need to ask your parents' permission, inshallah. But if there's something that I can help with, as tutoring, mentoring, youth work at your masjid, answering some basic questions of deen, helping in your studies, if there's anything I can do, inshallah, I'm at your service. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdullah.
You're welcome.